My husband cheated on me with a man while wearing my wedding dress, then tried to frame me for fraud and have me jailed. I fought back and made him pay dearly. I'm Sarah, 31F, working as a senior accountant at a major auditing firm in the city. My story with my husband Ethan, 35M, began like a dream that I now wish I had never woken up from. Ethan and I have been married for 5 years and together for a total of 8. Ethan is 4 years older than me. He's a smart, funny, and well-liked man. I always thought I was the luckiest woman in the world to have him by my side.
We had a life many people could only dream of. Ethan was my soulmate. I truly believe that. We shared everything, from our wildest dreams to our smallest daily worries. I trusted him implicitly, without a single doubt. Then, as if to challenge that trust, something terrible happened late last month. A meeting of mine was unexpectedly canceled, so I decided to head home early. It was a rare opportunity, and I thought, how can I surprise Ethan? I stopped by the convenience store, bought a few ingredients to cook his favorite Chinese dish, and went home to prepare it. Ethan is a freelance financial analyst, specializing in investment consulting for small and medium-sized businesses. He usually works from home. Since the pandemic, he only goes to the office once a week, sometimes even less. Little did I know that small decision would plunge me into a horrific nightmare. I opened the door and stepped inside. The house was eerily quiet. I tiptoed into the kitchen, put the groceries down, and headed upstairs, planning to surprise him with a hug from behind. But as I quietly walked into the bedroom, where I thought he was working, my world collapsed. That sight, I'll never be able to forget it. Ethan, my husband, my soulmate, the man of my life, he was on his knees in front of a strange man, and he was wearing my wedding dress. The pristine white wedding dress I wore on the happiest day of my life was now grotesquely and distortedly worn by Ethan as he performed oral sex on the other man. My heart stopped. My whole body stiffened. I stood stunned at the doorway. I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt thick, so suffocating that my own gasps, my rapid, ragged breaths, sounded like a beached fish. I quickly pulled my phone from my pocket and hit record. Subconsciously, I knew I needed proof, no matter what happened next. However, that sound startled Ethan and the other man, making them turn around. In that moment, my eyes met Ethan's. I saw absolute panic in his eyes. But for me, I felt a bone-deep disgust and agonizing pain course through my entire being. The other man immediately sprang to his feet, looking frightened. He hastily pulled up his pants, stammered an apology, and slipped past me, vanishing like a gust of wind, leaving Ethan and me alone in that suffocating house. In stark contrast to the other man, Ethan offered no apologies or remorse. Instead, he lunged at me like an animal, trying to snatch my phone. "What the hell are you doing?" Ethan roared, his voice filled with a strange and terrifying hostility. "Stop it! What do you think you're seeing? There's nothing!" Hearing him yell like that, I quickly dodged away and screamed, but he still managed to wrench the phone from my hand. Immediately, he used all his strength to hurl my phone to the ground. Everything shattered, just like the happiness he and I had built over so many years. "Now no one will believe you, no matter what you say. You're crazy, you're hallucinating, you're overly stressed." Thinking he had erased the evidence, he immediately screamed in my face. Those words, every single one, were like knives plunged straight into my heart. The kind man I had given my all to was gone. His true colors had been revealed, terrifying me to the brink of madness. I was too shocked, too panicked. Right then, I felt I was no longer safe in my own home. I couldn't stay there for another second. I backed away, trembling. My limbs automatically carried me out of that bedroom, then out of the apartment I once thought was my sanctuary. I couldn't utter a word, only gasps and the frantic pounding of my heart in my chest. I ran for my life. I don't know where I went or for how long, but I eventually stopped at Target. I was like a soulless person, just pushing a cart and grabbing some clothes and personal items. I didn't want anything from that apartment anymore. The thought that he had worn my clothes and done those depraved things made me shudder,
and I wanted to discard everything immediately, not wanting to touch anything that had Ethan's presence. After that, I rented an Airbnb, crawled inside, and hid myself from the world. That entire night, I couldn't sleep. I just lay there, a soulless body, drowning in absolute loneliness. I didn't dare tell anyone, not a single soul, not my parents, and certainly not my close friends. The shame was too immense, it crushed me. I don't care if he likes men or women, but he used me as a facade, a screen to hide his true nature. I didn't even feel like a person anymore, let alone a woman. That pain utterly destroyed me. A few days later, I was still holed up in the Airbnb, with no desire to eat or drink. But then my phone began to vibrate incessantly. It was Ethan. He kept texting, emailing, and calling non-stop. At first I thought he would apologize, explain, and beg me to come back. But no, when I finally answered, his voice on the phone was utterly sickening. "I know you're very angry with me, Sarah," Ethan said, his voice dripping with fake concern. "But let's talk like adults. I don't want things to go too far. We can just break up quietly. No need to blow this whole thing up. You don't want to ruin both our lives, do you? We used to love each other, didn't we?" Hearing those words, my blood boiled. Stay quiet for both our lives? After everything he had done to me, now he wanted me to be silent? Was it for both our sakes, or was he afraid I'd make a scene and he'd lose everything? And he even dared to mention, "We used to love each other." It was like a bucket of ice water thrown directly in my face. His brazenness was unbearable. All the suppressed humiliation, the pain of betrayal, and the isolation of the past few days suddenly erupted. I couldn't control myself. My voice trembling with rage, I screamed into the phone, "Quiet? You think I'll be quiet? You deceived me for 8 years. You destroyed me. You destroyed my trust. You destroyed my life. He says I'm crazy. I'll expose you. I'll let the whole world know what kind of scumbag you are. Just you wait." I slammed the phone down. I knew I had overreacted, but at that moment, I couldn't think of anything else. I just wanted him to know I would never stay silent. But that was also the turning point of everything. I had just hung up, my heart still pounding with anger, when moments later, my phone vibrated again. It was Ethan. This time, his voice held no fake pleas. It was ice cold and chillingly menacing. "Suit yourself, Sarah," Ethan said, each word like a nail hammered in. "But I warned you, I even tried to be reasonable. What did you just say? Expose me? Fine, let's see who gets exposed first." He hung up, and I immediately had a bad feeling. And he followed through. He had gone on the offensive. In the following days, I had to go back to work, but I started to feel that something was wrong. Colleagues looked at me with pity or avoided me. Messages from friends asking how I was doing also became strange. Even my parents, when I tried to call them to confide, answered the phone with excessive worry, then advised me to take a rest, my dear. I couldn't stand it and had to directly ask my mother what was going on. Why were they acting like that? That's when I learned Ethan had made his move. He proactively contacted everyone we knew and concocted a perfect story. I was experiencing serious psychological issues and a nervous breakdown due to work pressure. He even pretended to be worried, displaying the attentive concern of an exemplary husband trying to help his wife through a difficult period. I immediately knew what he was planning. It was all a cheap charade to isolate me. Ethan wanted me to lose my voice, to lose the trust of those around me. He did this so that now, if I were to say anything, he could easily manipulate people into thinking I was crazy, and no one would believe me anymore. An invisible cage was tightening around me. I felt myself sinking deeper into a hole with no way out, utterly alone. I thought that was the extent of the pain, but no, that was just the beginning. Ethan was far more cruel. Facing the risk of losing most of our shared assets, including our apartment and joint investments, Ethan didn't just want me to be silent, now he wanted me to disappear completely. He began to execute a sinister plan.
turning my life into a real hell. With his experience as a financial analyst, Ethan knew how to manipulate data. He started to forge documents to accuse me of embezzling funds from the auditing firm where I worked. Ethan accessed my personal laptop, which I often used for remote work, using the password I had once shared with him during our trusting days. He created fake transactions, transferring small sums of money from the company account to an anonymous account he had set up, then forged emails from me to make it look like I had approved these transactions. He even modified Excel files in the company's shared financial management system, adding my name to non-existent transactions. I only found out about all of this much later. Everything was done so meticulously that if not thoroughly checked, I would be considered the culprit. One day, I received an email from HR informing me that I was temporarily suspended due to financial irregularities in a project I was overseeing. I was stunned. The career I had built for over 10 years, my reputation, everything was collapsing. I wasn't just facing the risk of losing my entire career and the reputation I had poured so much sweat and effort into building. I could also end up in prison. The fear was so immense that no words could describe it. I immediately knew why, but the feeling of standing on the edge of a deep abyss ready to be swallowed at any moment always lingered. It turns out my soulmate was a demon in an angel's disguise. I thought I was drowning, with no way out, but in my most desperate moment, I suddenly remembered Chloe. She's been my best friend since college, and now she's a sharp young civil litigator with an incredibly high ethical standard. I had no choice but to call her.
I told her everything from that horrific scene to Ethan's gaslighting and even his framing conspiracy. Chloe listened to every single word without an ounce of judgment. After hearing the entire story, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Sarah, I believe you." That sentence was like an electric current running through my body, dissolving so much fear and doubt that had lingered for so long. Chloe helped me calm down, even if just a little. Without hesitation or beating around the bush, Chloe immediately introduced me to an incredibly skilled divorce lawyer named David. He specialized in complex cases, just like mine. Chloe and David understood that my words alone wouldn't be enough. We needed more evidence. The evidence Ethan had tried to erase, the evidence he had fabricated to frame me. The three of us sat down and devised a detailed plan. And the most crucial decision was we would hire a private investigator to track down the strange man who was with Ethan in that room. The man I later learned was named Alex. He was the only living proof that could turn this game around. I knew this was a huge gamble, but I had nothing left to lose. James, the private investigator, was a veteran with over 20 years of investigative experience. He was a somewhat stern-looking man, but his eyes were sharp as razors. His mission was to find Alex, the man who was with Ethan that day. I tried to recall every minute detail about Alex, his build, his voice, anything that could help. Despite the scarce information, the PI began his work. The process was difficult, costly, and incredibly stressful. James leveraged his connections, checked security cameras near our apartment, and cross-referenced transaction data from nearby coffee shops where Alex might have used a credit card. Every day that passed, I waited anxiously for news. Chloe also provided full support, using all her legal connections to expedite the process. We were groping in the dark. But finally, after many weeks of waiting, James found Alex. He had identified his address and even knew what Alex did and where he worked. Chloe and James arranged a secret meeting with Alex. When I met Alex, I immediately noticed the obvious fear on his face. He looked at us as if we were the police.
"I don't know anything," Alex stammered, his voice trembling. "Don't involve me. Cole is a dangerous man." He cowered, avoiding all questions. I knew Alex was terrified of Ethan, so scared that he'd rather endure this secret than confront Ethan. But we couldn't give up. Alex was the key. Alex was scared to death. He kept cowering, avoiding our gaze. I knew Ethan had threatened him terribly, but we couldn't give up. Chloe was the one in control. "Hello, Alex," Chloe began, her voice soft but firm. "I'm Chloe, Sarah's friend. I know you're scared, but we don't mean you any harm. We just want the truth. Do you see what Ethan is doing to Sarah? He's trying to destroy her life by framing her." Alex kept shaking his head frantically, his hands clasped tightly together. "I don't want to get into trouble. I'm just doing my job. This has nothing to do with me." Chloe sighed. She knew she had to change tactics. "You understand, Alex, you're in a difficult position. If you don't tell the truth, you could be charged as an accomplice to concealment. Ethan will drag you down with him. But if you testify, we will ensure you are fully protected, completely absolved of any responsibility. This is your only chance to free yourself from Ethan's control." Alex's eyes began to waver. He looked at me, then back at Chloe. I saw the conflict in his eyes. Chloe continued, her voice seemingly hitting Alex's sore spot. "He's not just deceiving his wife, he's also trying to frame her and send her to prison. He's turning Sarah's life into a living hell. Do you really want to protect someone like Ethan, or do you want your conscience to be clear?" Chloe's words were like a direct punch to Alex's conscience. He lowered his head, silent for a long moment. I knew we had a chance. Alex remained silent for a long time. I could clearly see the struggle in his eyes, between fear and something that resembled remorse. Finally, he lifted his head and sighed. "Okay," he said, his voice weak, "I'll testify, but you have to protect me." Alex's agreement was like a ray of light in a dark tunnel. I breathed a sigh of relief, but what he was about to reveal made me shudder even more than that terrifying night. Alex began to speak. He said that after that night, Ethan had contacted him many times to threaten him. Ethan told him to keep silent or he would face big trouble. But what Alex revealed next was truly outrageous. He said Ethan had bragged to him about making me disappear. Ethan had laid out a detailed, step-by-step plan to destroy me, from isolating me to framing me for falsifying financial documents, all to conceal his secret and gain control of our assets. And finally, Ethan looked Alex straight in the eye and said, "If you betray me like she did, I'll turn your life into a living hell immediately. Don't test me." Alex's eyes became panicked and filled with pain as he spoke of this. Hearing all this, my stomach churned. Ethan wasn't just a betrayer, he was a controlling psychopath, a true demon. He had seen my life as a game of chess and I was merely a pawn. This wasn't a moment of impulse. This was a meticulous, calculated conspiracy full of malice and depravity. A wave of disgust washed over me, overshadowing even the pain. I knew that now I wasn't just fighting for myself, I was fighting to expose a monster. Chloe and James recorded Alex's entire testimony and asked him to hand over relevant messages and emails. James also worked with the cybersecurity expert to examine my computer, discovering files that had been modified by an unknown account during the exact time Ethan had access to my computer. The day of the trial finally arrived. Both Ethan and I were in court, along with our lawyers. The atmosphere was incredibly tense. Ethan, still maintaining his fake composure, presented his evidence, falsely accusing me of forging documents. He spoke as if it were true, as if he was the victim and I the culprit. I just sat there, trying my best to stay calm. I placed all my trust in David and Chloe. Then David began. He called a witness, and that witness was Alex. The entire courtroom held its breath. Ethan's smug face suddenly turned ashen when he saw Alex walk in. Alex began his testimony. His voice, initially trembling, grew steadily clearer and firmer. He not only recounted his secret relationship with Ethan and that fateful night, but also laid bare everything, how Ethan had contacted and threatened him. Even more horrifying, Alex relayed Ethan's boasts and threats, including his elaborate scheme to destroy my life just to conceal his disgusting secret. "Shut up, you bastard! You're lying!" Ethan roared. Each word from Alex was like a direct stab at Ethan. On top of that, David began to present the evidence we had gathered, along with his sharpest arguments, to prove my undeniable innocence. Ethan sat there, his face contorting from ashen to beet red. He completely collapsed, beginning to tremble and then gradually descending into a frenzy. He shot up from his seat, his eyes filled with a wild, furious madness. He started screaming, cursing Alex, then turned his rage on me. His controlling and malicious nature was laid bare for the judge, the prosecutor, and everyone in the courtroom to see. Ethan tried to lunge at Alex, as if to attack him. Security personnel immediately had to intervene, holding him back. That scene was truly horrifying, but deep within me I felt a flicker of light. Finally, the truth had been laid bare. Ethan continued to scream and thrash around like a madman, even while being restrained. The entire courtroom descended into chaos. Ethan struggled, but it was futile. He was immediately escorted out of the courtroom, still howling threats. I saw the judge's face darken. Clearly, he was furious with Ethan's display. After Ethan was removed, the tension in the room finally began to subside. The judge banged his gavel, then delivered a decision I would never forget. Based on the evidence and testimony presented, especially the defendant Ethan's contempt of court and witness intimidation right here in this courtroom, the judge stated, his voice firm, the court hereby temporarily suspends this divorce proceeding. The defendant Ethan's file will be immediately transferred to criminal investigators for charges of document forgery, defamation, and witness intimidation. Hearing that, I felt like crying. Not from sadness, but because an immense burden had finally been lifted. Ethan would have to face the law. He would have to pay for what he'd done. This was only a preliminary ruling, but I knew a new beginning had arrived. Karma, at last, had come knocking. After that chaotic court session, everything changed rapidly. Ethan was immediately detained, and the criminal investigation accelerated. I provided all the evidence the private investigator had collected, plus Alex's testimony. Everything was crystal clear. Ultimately, Ethan was prosecuted and convicted. He was charged with document forgery, defaming me, and obstructing justice. I don't know exactly how many years he received, but I know it was a severe sentence. Furthermore, the financial career he was always so proud of, his entire life, was just as he threatened, completely ruined. But not by me. It was by his own doing. Concurrently, my divorce proceedings were finalized quickly, and of course the judgment was entirely in my favor. I regained all shared assets. The judge also ruled that Ethan had to compensate me a large sum for the emotional and professional damages he had caused. He lost absolutely everything. Most importantly, I secured a permanent restraining order against Ethan. Now he can't come near me, contact me, or disrupt my life anymore. It's a true liberation. Finally, I can breathe. You know, Ethan's karma didn't just stop with the law. After everything was exposed, his reputation was utterly destroyed. Everyone turned their backs on him. I heard whispers that even his family, who always defended him, had to endure extreme shame. His life, from being perfect in everyone's eyes, suddenly became an absolute zero. And Alex, the man who helped me expose Ethan, was finally freed. I know Alex was terrified, but he bravely spoke the truth. Now he can start a new life, no longer living under Ethan's threatening shadow. As for me, I'm no longer the lonely victim of this story. I fought a brutal, earth-shattering battle for justice, and I won. I've started my healing journey. It's not easy, but I'm slowly finding myself again, reclaiming the confidence Ethan stole. I'm rebuilding my career, and most importantly, rebuilding my life. My story might be horrific, but it also taught me so much. The most important lesson is trust yourself. No matter what happens, no matter who tries to manipulate you or make you doubt yourself, always believe your gut feeling. Seek help, never suffer alone. And remember, karma is real. Those who commit wrongs will, sooner or later, pay the price. Life might throw you knockout punches, but you can always get back up and fight for your truth. You are much stronger than you think. Thank you for listening to today's story from the Guilty Notes channel. If this story resonated with you, please like, share this video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other emotional real-life stories and valuable lessons. See you in the next video.